Hey guys, Doc Vinyl again. And today, well, I always do the intro on this. We're going to do a very familiar band. Many documentaries on them. You know what this is, obviously. This is not a song that you probably hear often on the radio by this band. And of course, I'm talking about the Eagles. And we're going to be doing the Eagles today. Not a prolific output of work, believe it or not. I'm only going to do their core albums. I'm not going to do Out of Eden. I'm mixed on the new one, to be perfectly honest with you. It's kind of a country album, really. I don't think it's their best work. I'm going to count on the 6 core albums. And I'm going to talk a little about collecting and the greatest hits, which I don't have here, but I'll talk about it, which is available at Max J Records. The Eagles are a really interesting band. I read a lot about them. I've always loved them. They've been in the background my whole life. Radio, music, what have you. They produce a prodigious amount of hits on these albums. And we'll go over them when we go over each album. No ranking here because, they're all good. We're only going to be doing 6 albums anyway. So it was a band that really defined the 70s. After bands like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, and others, they were right up there as an American band, one of the top echelons of American rock. Now, they started out with more of a country feel to them, but they went more rock and roll. Band members changed over the survey of their career, and the music changed. So it is pretty interesting. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about the background. Now, predominantly, the Eagles are similar to the Beatles. They're a 4-man band, and the predominant songwriters are, like Lennon and McCartney, are Don Henley and Glenn Frey. They were really the predominant core members of the band. But for the first 4 members, I did a little research on material here. We had Bernie Leadon and Randy Meisner, who's the original bass player, and Bernie Leadon played various guitars and parts and what have you. So they started out, believe it or not, as a backup band for Linda Ronstadt, of all things. Wow, imagine that. Well, they got quite a bit of notoriety far beyond Linda Ronstadt's ever wildest dreams. They became one of the biggest bands in the 70s and had some of the biggest hits and biggest ballads, as you are all familiar with. And the Eagles are one of the bands that's interesting that when they came out in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, people that were older, that were not of that generation, succumbed to the charm of the music, and of course the younger people loved it, and they just had such a core of interest. I mean, I remember my Auntie Julie, she was 25, 30 years older than I am, and she loved the Eagles, and my mother loved the Eagles. So, and this was just, they just had this really general appeal to a wide, broad audience. And part of it probably was the fact that they were rock and roll, but a little country mixed in, but not too twangy country, just enough to give it a little flavor. So they were formed in 1972, and there was a couple of different things going on. David Geffen was, of course, involved, found them, got a producer. And their first album comes out in 1972. It's just called The Eagles. And here it is. Pretty cool stuff. Very cool. Got kind of a western Arizona feel to it, as you can see here. I kind of went over it in the premiere out on the debut albums, I believe. And just really cool stuff here. I believe the man who produced it, he didn't want to produce them at first, didn't think they were that much of a talent. And then he was produced by Glenn Johns, that's what it was. And Glenn Johns, they wanted him, he'd done work with The Who and other band members, and they really wanted him, but at first the story was he didn't really think they had a good sound. He thought they would kind of sound disparate. But once he heard them harmonize, he said they're pretty good. So this was the original band, which was Glenn Frey, Don Henley, Randy Meisner, and Bernie Leadon. So Bernie Leadon had more of a country twang. He played banjo and what have you. Now, if you look at this album, oh my God, 3 hits right off the top of the bat. The first two songs on side 1 is "Take It Easy" and "Witchy Woman." Wow, right there, boom, boom, big radio hits. Lots of hooks, great melodic tunes. "Witchy Woman" had a very kind of a ethereal feel to it. Then "Chug All Night," which was kind of a country, kind of rocky roll song. "Most of Us Are Sad," "Nightingale," and "Train Leaves Here in the Morning." Then "Take the Devil," "Early Bird," and then the last hit was "Peaceful Easy Feeling," which was a ballad, well-rounded song. Lots of good hooks in this. Had a country-esque feel to it, but definitely a core of rock and roll. Very successful album. It debuted well. It did really well. And it was, it was very well received. All right. And I'm going to go back to this later because I have a first pressing of this particular album. This album now has become kind of hard to find, the original first pressing, and it sounds a little different because, of course, as you can imagine, this album has been repressed a bazillion times. And the other pressings are good, but this is a first core pressing, which I have right here. Actually, I'll show you the vinyl I have. I might as well go over it now. This is I have it in the MoFi sleeve, of course. And this is the original pressing, which I've got to give a little lesson on this, which is interesting here. And the original pressing has the white label. You see the white label there with the blue in here. Later on, the whole label was blue with that and this in the background. But this was the original white label, and this, of course, is a SD5054. This wasn't terribly expensive a couple years ago. I got this, I don't know, 10, 12 bucks. I've seen it go down for almost close to 100. It shot up, especially if it's in really good shape. And this one's, I'd say, I'm conservative. I'd say this is a VG plus. Fine. Definitely close to fine. There's no skips or anything. It's a great album, but I lucked out. But the Eagles recently have, with the death of Glenn Frey and other things, they've become kind of kind of big collector band. But this was one of the things I just want to bring up. I think all of these are first pressings, pretty much. I kind of went on my way to do that because there's only 6 albums, and they weren't particularly expensive, but they are climbing. So if you do see them, snag them. So this is their first album. Did really, really well. Good stuff. Their second album comes out, I believe, in 1973. And let's see. Yes, I can confirm that. And of course, this one is a very country westerny album. It's called Desperado. And of course, they're dressed as cowboys. The same 4 members that I mentioned before: Glenn Frey, Don Henley, Bernie Leadon, and Randy Meisner, the original bass player. Cool stuff. Now, this album, out of the 6 albums I'm going to cover, is probably the least popular in sales overall, but really good. And I think maybe the reason for it was the fact that it was so country ridden. It was a very heavy country album. And of course, this has Doolin Dalton, 21, Out of Control, Tequila Sunrise, which was a pretty good hit, but not at the time. It became a hit later. And then, of course, the title track, Desperado, which is a really, really good song. Probably the best song on the album for success-wise, not for me personally. Side 2 had Certain Kind of Fool, Outlaw Man, Saturday Night, Bitter Creek, Doolin Dalton Part 2, and then a reprise of Desperado. And again, you can see from the back here, it has a very kind of a western feel to it. It's a great album. Hard to get in good shape, by the way. It's always beat up. This one's a little beat up, too. This one and one of these nights are 2 hard ones to get in tough shape. I got them pretty good. The vinyl's good, but the sleeves aren't as good. But I'm not a crazy collector. But this was pretty cool. Really good album. Again, Desperado being the title track. And then this leads on to their third album, which comes out in 1974, which is On the Border, which again has a country-esque feel to it. Now, On the Border features for the first time Don Felder on guitar, which is very interesting because he later becomes one of the major guitar players in the band for the rest of their tenure of their career. This album's a little different. And this one's cool. Look, it comes with a poster and everything, and with Glenn Frey on the other side, and that's kind of cool. It has it, I guess. I mean, I'm not that I'm gonna put it up in your room or whatever, but that was kind of a big thing back in the 70s. A lot of shtickers that give you posters with the album. This album here has a lot of good hits on it. This started to tend to get back towards their rock and roll-y roots and a little less country. This has Already Gone, which is a really good song. You Never Cry Like a Lover, Midnight Flyer, My Man, and On the Border. And then, of course, the song I played with, one of my favorites, is James Dean on side 2, which is it's a rock and roll song, but it has a kind of a country. It's very difficult to kind of plug it and say, is that a rock? Is that country? It's a little bit of both, but maybe rock country rock? I don't know, whatever. Southern rock? I don't know. But they're not from the South, by the way. They're from California, so can't call it Southern rock. 055, Is It True? Good Day in Hell, and The Best of My Love, which, of course, they always tend to write a song on this. Every album has one. As you could tell, the first album had one, and Desperado had Desperado. This has The Best of My Love, and the Peaceful Easy Feeling was on the first album. So they kind of always have that nice hooky ballad. Great album. Tough to get in good shape, by the way. Another little collector's point, because it's a white album. It's always beat up. And even this one is the best I could get, but it still had like little dings in here and everything. To get one of these without any ring wear and be mint with the poster and all the doohickeys and the right little thing in the inside, you're looking, again, close to $100. Again, hard to find in good shape. And I believe on that one, I have it on the thing. That's a first pressing too. And that's the blue label that I was talking about when they went to the they changed their label a little bit, and it went to the blue label like I showed you before. The label was, see, they had this core here, but then after Desperado, this became the major label. Let me see, I think I have an example of one right here. Let me see if I can find it. And yeah, right here, see. You can see it right here. Let me see if I can take it off for you real quick. And I was referring to this, the Asylum record. See, the label was the clouds and thing in the background. So they changed. So the first two albums have that in it, and then they changed the labels. Those are one of the telltale signs if it's a first or second pressing, if you're into that sort of thing. I just thought I'd put it out there because it's kind of a nice little note to make. Now, after this album, they go into their fourth album, and their fourth album, oh yeah, by the way, Al Perkins was on the border, on the border too. He played some cool steel guitar. Now that's an interesting little note I want to make, because he plays steel guitar. He comes back later, but then of course later one of the members becomes a permanent member in the last two albums, and then their recent tour in the past 10 years, he is too. And he also had a career on his own, which we'll talk a little bit about him in a minute. He played steel guitar too. Well, their fourth album was One of These Nights. And again, this had kind of a country feel to it again. Cool textured album, has kind of the textured feel to it. This is a really good album. This has, of course, One of These Nights, the title track, which was a big hit. Too Many Hands. Oh, God, let me grab my glasses. I'm losing it here. Wow, this is a tough one. Who to Waltz, Journey to the Sorcerer, which was kind of a unusual stuff at the end there. Lion Eyes, Take It to the Limit, which of course was another big song, and that was of course featured Randy Meisner singing. Visions, After the Thrill Is Gone, and I Wish You, oh God, I can't even, Wish You Peace. So yeah, now this really solidifies the lineup with Don Felder in the band, as you can see now. Now instead of a 4-man group, it's now a core 5-man group with Don Henley, Bernie Leadon, and I believe at this time when Don Felder joins the band and Bernie Leadon have a little bit of a artistic change, because Leadon changes, because I don't believe he's on this album, but I'll confirm that with you, which of course is their next biggest album. This was well received, One of These Nights, and of course this was really one of the big hits. This is in 1975. Now, their biggest album of all time comes out. You can see it right here. I got a first pressing. I'll give you all the little nuances and craziness about this album. I'll talk a little bit about it. Of course, I'm talking about Hotel California. This comes out in 1976, and that song probably is the only song that could possibly, as a power rock ballad, tend to challenge Stairway to Heaven. Would be, of course, Hotel California. I like both. I don't know which one I like better. They're both so good. This album is very, very interesting. And of course, this has a poster, and I think it's got all the doohickeys with it. Yeah, it's got the poster, and yeah, I can't remember who's in it, and the black and white, and well, whatever. I don't know. Not a big deal. And then the band members. This is what I want to tell you. I believe at this point, was I right? And yes, I was. Bernie Leadon is out of the band at this time. He had, of course, decided to go more of a country route and decided to change. Of course, this is the first album to feature Joe Walsh on guitar. Now, Joe Walsh had been in a band called The James Gang, which was really popular, had a couple big hits in the early 70s. That band had broken up, and he had been approached by the Eagles to join as a guitarist and a songwriter. Of course, his contribution on this is pretty solid and pretty fast. Life in the Fast Lane, one of the big hits, he wrote it. That's his guitar line. That's basically, they wrote the words, and he just basically put the song together. There's Hotel California. Almost every song on this album is a hit. New Kid in Town, Life in the Fast Lane, and Wasted Time. That's the first side. All songs, all great. Side 2 is Wasted Time Reprise, Victim of Love, great song, Pretty Maids, All in a Row, Try and Love Again, and The Last Resort. Great album. Just really cool stuff. And again, at this point, we have the lineup is essentially Don Henley, Glenn Frey, Don Felder on guitar, Joe Walsh on guitar. So you had 3 guys that could play guitar, and of course Joe Walsh played keyboards a little bit here too, and then Randy Meisner on bass. And the other thing is they all sang, and Joe Walsh sang too, as you know. So that was now the band, the Eagles, the power band, the Eagles. And of course this album really propelled them to superstardom, obviously. Probably one of the #1 selling albums of all time up there in American bands. I mean, I think it went 23 times platinum over, something crazy million. Now, there's how to determine this is the first pressing, and of course the evil devil and everything. As you can look quickly here, there is, if you look closely, I don't want to get that glare out of there with the ring light, but you see right there, see that's supposed to be the devil, this evil creature right here that's overlooking the the Hotel California. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm going to see. He's right there. Can you see? Can you see that? Yeah, see? Kind of creepy looking, I know. But, yeah, the later albums, they blanked that out. There's nobody up there. So you can tell the first pressing by having that. And this had this kind of undertones of satanic worship or something. I don't know. Everything in the 70s had undertones of satanic worship. I don't know. It was like some sort of, I don't know, Christian or religious crusade against rock and roll. But yeah, I just, it's part of it. But this was an amazing album. Is it my favorite album? No, I love it. It's a great album, but not my favorite album. But definitely one of their best-selling albums. Now, the last album they had before they broke up, which was, of course, The Long Run, which I really like. And a lot of people didn't like this album, but I do a lot. Now, this album is interesting because this is a completely different lineup a little bit. It still has Don Henley and Glenn Frey, still has Joe Walsh, but Randy Meisner leaves the band, and Tim Schmidt joins as bass player right here, as you can see. So it's Joe Walsh. I believe I can identify these guys. Joe Walsh, Don Henley, Glenn Frey, Tim Schmidt, and Don Felder. Don Felder, the guitar. So this was the new lineup. So the band had changed dramatically from its founding fathers because you figure the only two people that stayed were Don Henley and Glenn Frey. Everyone else is new. All right, so that's kind of an interesting note, and it changes. This album is by far the most rock and roll album they did. There's very little country-esque songs on this, and that's probably the reason why I like it so much. Not that I hate country, but I don't mind it as long as it sticks to its roots and doesn't become, the Garth Brooks show or something. All right, on this album we have The Long Run, great song. One of my favorite songs of all time, I Can't Tell You Why, very good. In the City, another great song. The Disco Strangler, and King of Hollywood. And of course, In the City was written, I believe, by Joe Walsh. Side 2 is Heartache Tonight, again, great song. I believe that was written by Bob Seger, I think, if I am to be correct about that. Let me see if I can confirm that. This would be my memory. I don't know, little snippets of information. Yep, I was right. Heartache Tonight was written by Don Henley, Glenn Frey, Bob Seger, and J.D. Souther, because J.D. Souther wrote most of his songs. And then In the City was written by Joe Walsh. I remember, yep, I do remember this one, so this is pretty good. And again, this was the last album before they broke up, and of course that whole hell freezes over before they'd get back together, and of course that was the name of their tour and what have you. And their tour was well received. Great album. I love this. To me, this is the end of the Eagles, as we know and love. The album that came out later, Out of Eden, it's not bad. I don't hate it. It's just, I didn't have it, and I didn't bother getting it. It's not one of my big favorites. Of course, you all know the one with the head, Eagles Greatest Hits. They have that, and I think there's another one with the Eagles Greatest Hits Live, or what have you. Both of them available through Max J Records. John has them over the store. Great albums. Of course, probably the number one selling Greatest Hits album was the Eagles Greatest Hits. I mean, he's always selling out of it. I mean, it's like the Chicago Greatest Hits. Everyone buys them because, I mean, it's a greatest hit album. Now, I always liked Long Run. I just, I remember when this came out, this was like a big hit. And of course, I forgot to tell you the year it came out. This comes out in 1979. I remember I was at, I think, a 5th grade, 6th grade dance or something like that, and someone brought this in because I remember the DJ was the music teacher, and he'd play albums, and you could bring an album if you wanted, and someone brought this in, and holding up, Eagles! And it's like, yeah, cool. I guess it was cool. I thought it was kind of cool. But great album nevertheless. So, that concludes our Eagles part of the story. So we're going to talk a little bit about the band and the breakup and what happens and thereafter, and then move it on. There's a lot of controversy. A little personal attention. I saw Don Henley in 1991 during the Walden Woods concert, and he played with Glenn Frey, which was very, very controversial because everyone thought they would never play together. Also, Joe Walsh was there, which that was almost the Eagles, and Bob Seger was there, and Jimmy Buffett. So I saw them all on stage. It was a cool Walden Woods. It was a benefit for Walden Woods. I remember that concert. It was amazing. But having the three of them on stage, Joe Walsh, Glenn Frey, and Don Henley, they, of course, played some Eagles songs. They didn't play a ton of them. They played like 3 or 4. I can't even remember which ones, but I do remember they played Heartache Tonight because Bob Seger sang in on that one. And they did play I Can't Tell You Why, I think, and a couple others. But it was a great concert. It was mostly Don Henley stuff, of course. But that was my personal attention, which I really liked. Cool stuff. Very cool. Great band. And the Eagles are really probably one of the most successful American bands after like the Doors and Jimi Hendrix, what have you. But I mean, different time period. But definitely one of the most successful bands. And I went over a little bit of the collecting bit, which I thought was interesting. And I might interject a little bit of that in some future shows, talk about certain pressings on vinyl. Of course, CDs, it doesn't really matter, but vinyl, some stuff is a little bit more collectible and what have you. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that's the Eagles, guys. Again, I didn't do the new album like I told you, and a couple live things, and Hell Freezes over touring, and that's well covered and trod. But I went over the core of the band and what have you, so the classical stuff. So cool. So I hope you guys stay safe, and I will see you next time on Dark Vinyl.